I have my own mathematical discovery in audio production. Nobody knows it. I'm gonna tell you this today. It's amazing. I'm gonna explain how the circle and tangents explain soft-knee compressors. And I'm gonna show you absolutely crazy mind-blowing thing how 2-to-1 may compress more than 4-to-1. SSL master bus compressor, as one of the most known compressor in the history, has this strange behavior. Hi guys, this is Andrew with one of the best audio production and music mixing courses. How the system works, how to buy any full lesson you can read in the description or in the first pinned comment. Also the information about my work history and 240 reviews, all 5 stars, and 150 all 5 stars reviews verified by Google. The link you can find in the description or in the first pinned comment. Even in 2008, I wrote an article for this magazine. It's one of top 100 magazines on audio production who was deciding on tech award and stuff like this. As you can see, I was doing it in 2008. The notary checked my workbook, which is typical in my former country. It's an official document. It's a notary verified document. In 2013, as you can see, it says I was transferred to the position of the first rank audio engineer in the biggest broadcasting corporation of my former country as a senior audio engineer. And also in 2013, I received an award for the contribution to the field. But who cares about this? My videos is a top-notch thing. Check it out. We continue today with the lesson number 15. We're gonna repeat the graph. It's perfectly explained in the previous subtopic, so I'm gonna simplify this graph a bit. So vertical axis, horizontal axis. A lot of people make this mistake thinking that horizontal is output. Actually, horizontal is input. So it's input measured in decibels, and vertical is output. I already mentioned all these in a hard knee topic, so I'm not gonna repeat the same just to speed up the process. We have this graph of compression, so-called. So it divides this 90 degrees angle in two halves, so 45 and 45 degrees. At some point, which is related to the threshold level, you're gonna have breakup point, so-called, and then curve will be tilted. If it's tilted fully to the horizontal position, it's a limiter. It's if not tilted at all and continues with 45 degrees, it's a 1-to-1 ratio. So it's a 4-to-1 on this graph. The threshold, it's a shadow thrown to the axis, to both axes actually, and or mathematically speaking, it's so-called projection. So minus infinity over here, 0 is maximum. We use digital scale DBFS, so 0 is here. I explained all this step by step, like for complete beginners in some of previous lessons. 3 videos is far from real education. In audio production, there is absolutely nothing even close to my course in terms of the value of how much you get for the same amount of money. If you spend the same amount on monitors or microphones or plugins, it will not be even close to the value how much these lessons can give you. So this is minus 10. Let's say we have some peak above the threshold. As you know, peaks in a hard knee compressor, peaks only above the threshold should be compressed. Let's say minus 6 dB. So I use this minus 6 dB. Obviously minus 6 between minus 10 and 0. So this is minus 6. In a hard knee compression, it's supposed to be throwing its projection to the graph, throwing its projection to the output axis, to the vertical axis, and obviously getting less level. Threshold still minus 10, so it's above the threshold, but not as much as minus 6. So seems like less, minus 8. Not minus 6 anymore, but minus 8. With the soft knee compressor, we have so-called rounded out part. Let's say this is the plugin, which is visually represents how it looks like. So this is hard knee, the curve goes, then breakup point, then tilted. Soft knee makes some part of it, like rounded out from here to here, right? So it's a rounded out part. Let's say from here to here. It's a connection, almost like a piece of circle. Rounded out part, going and going, smoothing, right? So now, kind of, you should forget about this piece. We have completely new graph. Basically, final graph, which we deal with right now, is this then rounded out part, and this. Even though we set up threshold minus 10 dB, like I do on this plugin, minus 10 dB with the threshold, with the soft knee compressors, actual curve actually below minus 10. Minus 10 would be this. We throw this shadow, we meet the graph a bit below over here. Obviously, the real sort of curve will be below minus 10. And now imagine what happens to the peak, which is minus 6. It throws its shadow, it goes, but it touches the graph, as you can see, a bit below than expected. So it will be just literally at the lower level. And then when you throw this shadow or projection to the graph, it was -6. It's supposed to be something above -10, maybe -8. But even from this picture, you can see probably it will be at the level of -10. It's just coincidence, the 10 and 10, it can be not necessarily 10, it can be -9.5, it can be even -10.5, even below the threshold. And as you can see, this rounded out part can be just a bit less, for example, just from here to here. So it will be not too soft knee compressor. And it can be so-called super soft knee compressor, which starts almost from the very top and ends up almost to the very bottom like this. So this -6 peak with this like bright green would touch this graph actually even earlier, and that's why output level would be even more compressed. A lot of people think that amount of compression depends just on the ratio or on the threshold level, but as you can see, it really depends on the type of soft knee you have. So volume dropped down more than we expected. I'm breaking my voice like I'm 13 years old. When I was 13, I was a rapper. And I wanted to have very deep, very low voice because my heroes in rap was guys with deep voice, like Coolio and Tupac. But now it's opposite. I have deep voice, but it's breaking back to the higher pitch, like I was a good rapper. I was more like Nas. Philosophy, poetry, and orchestral beats and stuff like this. I'm not gonna show those songs to you. I'm just an audio engineering teacher for now, so forget about my songs. Threshold is lower than we set up. It's a first statement, it's far from most important one, but we're gonna start with this one. So as a result, we have more compression in a soft knee mode with the same threshold. Soft knee compressors compress even peaks below the threshold. For example, let's imagine we have the same example like we had before. The peak was -15 dB, so it's somewhere here, -15. Now, if you throw it, if it was hard knee compressor, it would touch the graph literally over here, a bit above the new curve. It would throw its projection to the vertical axis, it still would be -15 because it's basically like a square, as you can see from here to here. Right? So all distances are the same, -15 dB. But we have soft knee compressor, which means even -15 dB peak touches the graph just little bit earlier. And if it was -12, for example, it would be touching even earlier, let's say, over here. -15 touches it over here. Little bit below hard knee curve, how it would look like if it was hard knee compressor. So it throws its projection here and you get something like -15.5, -16 maybe. Little compression, So peaks below the threshold will be compressed not as much as peaks above the threshold, but still some suppression will happen to those peaks. -15.5 instead of -15. And absolutely mind-blowing thing that actually in this rounded out zone, which is basically, as I mentioned before, from here to here, you actually have variable ratio. Even if your compressor is set up to 4:1, you're not gonna have 4:1 everywhere. Just imagine, crazy. Let's imitate this rounded out zone. Over here on the very top and everything above it, it would be, yes, 4:1. Below the rounded out, you're not gonna have any compression, so it will be 1:1 ratio. But in the rounded out zone, you're gonna have variable ratio. Almost like this mortgage rate, variable rate, like a prison for the owner of a house, I was there actually. Luckily I escaped. Let's say over here it would be 1.3:1. So compression is so smooth, it's so minimal. You almost don't hear any difference, but still a little bit of smoothness. Like -15 becomes -15.5. Somewhere in the middle it would be something like 2:1, 3:1, So basically 2:1, then let's say somewhere closer to 4:1, it will be 3:1. So you have this nice transition from more compression to less compression. Each node has some louder peaks and some quieter peaks. And all of those peaks probably will be compressed to some extent. But real peaks which are supposed to be compressed with 4:1. Peaks which are not supposed to be compressed will be compressed maybe 1.5:1. That's why it sounds so natural and so smooth. My discovery is farther in this video. In a zone of soft knee, we have a variable ratio from 1.1:1 to 3.9:1. So if you ask me why soft knee compressors much more popular than hard knee compressors, or at least let's say they more common, more peaks will be compressed. They all will sound similar, right? Because you put some pressure to every peak basically. So thus more natural. Transition from node to node, it's also more natural. Even compressors which don't have too crazy soft knee, they still have some soft knee, let's say 1176. Crazy soft knee, like very, very wide range of soft knee. It's compressors like, let's say, LA to A. I pointed out to that compressor. 2 points. Plugin can do the same as this compressor. Again, emulations they apply is just mathematical sort of attempt to explain what LA2A does. Its optical element still somehow sounds not exactly the same like these plugin emulations. From the other side, quite exaggeration to have optical compressors. Sometimes, if you're really good in settings of any compressor, you can achieve amazing results, and optical compressor still sometimes fluctuates and does something on its own which you don't control. So I'm not gonna exaggerate, but this compressor costs $5,000, and in some situations I can say it's better than plugins. In other situations I can say you don't need to spend any money for optical compressor. Go with VCA compressors. So it really depends on situation. So where exactly soft knee compressors shine? They good for evening out. So if you need to even out uneven vocals which jumping out of the mix, so they don't sit in the mix, soft knee compressor. You need natural instruments, acoustic piano, strings or something, soft knee compressor. Again, if you need a compressor, of course. Vocals, basically, right? Again, depends. If you perform Onyx hip-hop song or scream metal or something, maybe, again, it would be too soft for you. But for natural vocals, yes. And for the whole song, master bass compressors, let's say, soft knee. This is funny. I showed it in one of my older videos. I always really respected Soft Tube Company, not last on my list, you know. But their SSL Master Bass Compressor plugin, which is bass processor, actually they set up it in most presets. I don't care about presets, but even default settings is in hard knee mode. It's complete nonsense. SSL Master Bass Compressor is supposed to be soft knee. I knew it, but I just double checked with the main engineer of SSL Company, and he confirmed it's supposed to be soft knee. This is how plugin world nowadays. They claim something, but in fact, in the end of the day, it can be completely not what real device does. But you sold out on buying a plugin because you believe it's supposed to be completely authentic emulation. Now I'm probably gonna blow your mind because a lot of people don't know it. This is the statement from my other nodes. For the last 20-30 years, probably every second audio engineer uses this compressor on the master bass. In a cell master bass compressor 2-to-1, which is supposed to give less compression than 4-to-1, actually gives more compression than 4-to-1. And the reason for it, because 2-to-1 has much harder soft knee zone. Just because of 2-to-1 super soft knee compressor, its rounded out zone literally deeper, like lower down in volume, and that's why any peak reaches this curve earlier, throwing its shadow or projection to the other output axis. Like lower, and that's why everything is quieter. More compression, you know what I mean? 4-to-1 is not as wide soft knee, that's why it's higher meeting between the graph and your peaks. And you have less compression. Let me show you an example. Let's say this is the beat. This pad is just magical. Hello 90s, SSL Master Bass Compression version 2, native version 2. I was official tester of version 1. SSL company hired many guys to test Duende compressor, which was ported to the native version 1. I'm not sure if SSL company really listened to the testers. Pointed out some disadvantages and mistakes in their plugins, but actually they eventually came out without any fixes. 10 milliseconds attack. Automatic release, 2-to-1 ratio. A lot of people would set up this compressor like this. Cursor for example. Cursor would go with 4-to-1, but majority of users of master bass compressors use lower ratio like 2-to-1. So I compress by 3 dB, so the needle will be somewhere not too far away from 4. Now we increase ratio from 2-to-1 to 4-to-1. 4-to-1 supposed to be more pressure, right? Higher ratio, more compression. But look how much this compressor does. Somewhere in the middle, only 2 dB. By 1 dB less than 2-to-1. Crazy, right? So this is what I'm talking about. It's about softknee. So SSL master bus compressor is not just like one compressor with settings. You almost can consider it like two different compressors. One is not too soft knee compressor with 4:1 ratio, and very soft knee compressor with 2:1 ratio. So it's like two compressors in one. Now I'm finally gonna explain my mathematical discovery of tangents. If we come back to the graph, as you can see, this is rounded out part, but if you continue drawing, you can imagine like it's a piece of circle, It's a huge, gigantic circle like this. The center of the circle somewhere here. If you imagine this minus 6 dB peak, you put a radius from the center of the circle to this particular meeting of this projection of minus 6 to the circle. What tangents are in mathematics? If you imagine any circle, and then you put a radius, then you put some sort of a line which touches the circle from outside but creating 90 degrees angle to this line, this particular piece called tangent. Instead of high school, I had this elite lyceum of physics mathematics, which was even higher grade education than university, which eventually I graduated from with the bachelor degree. So we learn this crazy stuff, blah, 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 you know what I mean? With this particular touching point, you create this like 90 degrees angle, like this, and you can see it's almost the same, like parallel to this black line, right? So it's almost 4:1. A bit higher would be 4:1, but a bit less, 3.9:1. In this rounded out zone, when it touches it over here, we have 3.9:1 instead of 4:1. If you put this curve to minus 15 peak, again, you connect the center of the circle to this particular blue dot, then you put a tangent with 90 degrees angle like this. As you can see, it will not be exactly like this black line, which is 1:1, no compression, but little bit tilted, but still almost like 1:1. So it would be probably something like 1.3:1, just little bit of compression over here. I'm gonna mention it over here. It's called Andrew Zeleno tangent theory. Now I'm gonna blow your mind. I'm gonna explain difference between feed-forward compressors and feedback compressors and why feed-forward compressor cannot even out your notes. And also I'm gonna blow your mind with three-way speakers. A lot of people understand that small woofer dedicated to mid frequencies can give you more precision when you have large woofer dedicated just to lows. But three-way speakers have their own disadvantages. I'm gonna really show you all these phases and what exactly going on with three-way speakers, 80% of mixing and mastering, and last 20% as parallel topics. Now parallel topic is studio setup and subtopic of it is studio monitors. It's amazing. I bust so many myths. How to buy full lessons, read the description or in the first pinned comment. And also I use direct communication, so any questions just send me an email. Hey comrade, give me your AK-47.